The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. It is about 1:32 right now. Um, we we have some of our colleagues here. We don't have quite a quorum, so I'm going to go ahead and put us into recess until we can acquire quorum. I'd like to thank my colleagues who are here already, and as soon as we get DOA here, we'll send them in, and by that time we should have quorum. So we are in recess. The colleagues, the committee of the whole is back from recess. We did finish with Senator Lujan. Senator Brown. And at this time, I will go ahead and recognize Senator Joanne Brown. Good afternoon. You may proceed. You have 5 minutes. No, we're on round two. We can turn on the clock? Yes. You have 5 minutes. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I certainly appreciate our panel coming back this afternoon. I did listen in on the session this morning and the questions and the responses that were provided, and I do appreciate that. I don't have too many more questions. I think pretty much we're looking forward to the process of implementation. I think some questions have come up with regards to how do we secure and insulate this from the political process so that if there's an appeal on a particular case, how we're going to address that. And I think that's something we at the legislature can look at so that we can, remove any possibility, certainly with regards to health care of our employees and our retirees from, the political process, because I can just see how that can expand and mutate into things we don't want to see. Other than that, I will look forward to how we proceed with this, and then certainly the informational briefings that are going to be provided to the employees and retirees at the Guam Museum and the schedule that's been provided, and we'll take it from there. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, for the opportunity to comment. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Senator Brown. Legislative Secretary, Senator Amanda, I will recognize you at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and thank you again to the panel. And all my questions were answered yesterday, so I appreciate that you're back here again for the second round. And I'll yield my time to the Speaker.
Thank you very much, Legislative Secretary. At this time, I recognize Speaker Therese. You have 10 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you again to the panel and those that were here this morning. So a lot of information has come to us. I think the bill, at the time it was introduced prior to that public hearing we had, and also even after the public hearing, was very reasonable given the information that we had at that time. Some of the information we have received just yesterday, and including the governor's letter to the negotiating team and her selection, and also the most important part, I think, is the rates that were disclosed yesterday and the open enrollment information. So at the time, of course, after the public hearing, we were very concerned about a few things. One of them, that there was a recommendation in the letter from the health insurance negotiating team, or to us, that there be a government contribution to surplus, or maybe that's being used recently as a reserve, and there was none at the time. That they were predicting at that time a significant increase in premiums, especially for those holding Take Care subscribers. And we were worried that the government was going to build its surplus on the backs of the ratepayers at that time. There was no stop loss in place. There were no rules in place to ensure that all of the employees would be treated fairly, that there would be no political determinations of additional coverage for certain people and not all. We were worried about those who had been using the FHP clinic for a long time, and that they might be displaced and have to find other providers when we already have, I think, a lack of providers, or a shortage of providers, I would say. I'm worried about the providers being able to take on all of those people. And Select Care had testified that the governor could override the TPA decision on a claim, and we did not have rules in place. So today, I'm very happy that we've seen the new rate sheet, that the rates look great to me. They, as described earlier, so the rates, I think, I don't have any more issues with them, except I guess I want to ask, in order to make this change and to lower the rates for the employees and the retirees, did the government's intended contribution then increase? Like, is the percentage different or the amounts going to be different for the government?
Hi, Senator. So yes, so for the employees to maintain that contribution, the difference was shifted to the government's contribution.
All right. And with that, the government's increase in cost is still only 5%? Or is it more?
You're referring to the overall increase that I was talking about. Yes, I think it went to 5.7%.
Sorry.
It increased to 5.7%.
Okay, so what about the government's contribution? In other words, what can agencies expect since they're the one paying out the government side of the premium? Is it a certain percentage rise on their part, or?
Yeah, that of course depends upon how many employees
Of course.
they have. Right. So those rates that they're on the sheet, the rates that the government
that's
departments
right.
are going to contribute.
Okay, so you're saying, so we had a 5% overall cost increase or less, or 5 point some, and it's like between 120 to 135 million. Can I ask what it was last year?
Sorry, could you just guide me to what you're looking at?
Well, no, you testified. You said we're looking at 120 to 135 million versus if it was a 15% potential increase, it would have been 141 to 155 million.
Yes.
So the 120 to 135, yeah, what does that compare to last year's?
Well, thank you. Thank you, Senator. It's of course the current year, which we've still got 1 month to go.
I mean, current year,
Yeah.
yes.
But let me find the expected. The expected amount is 135 million.
Okay. All right, well then that's good news too. If you're saying the cost for the FY24 is going to be between 120 and 135, and the cost for the current year is 135 for the government. All right, and the rates for the ratepayers are going to either go down significantly for those in select care or stay the same for those in take care. That's huge. I understand the network part, but okay, so my remaining concerns are just the stop loss. You said you're still in the procurement. Do you have any, if you're procuring it at this time, what is your parameter? What have you asked for? Like when does that kick in? Is that after a certain amount of claims or overall claims, or when?
Like I explained, there's the aggregate stop loss or a individual claim stop loss. And at the moment, we're looking at an individual claim stop loss.
Individual claim, at what amount?
We haven't yet decided.
So you haven't set up for this procurement yet?
The actuaries are active. I don't know how you say it. The actuaries are actively looking at it.
Can we have any assurance as to when that will be in place? Will that be in place on October 1st?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
And what about, in your letter prior to the hearing, you had said that the government should have a contribution to surplus. In this bill, they talk about the government should have a reserve. I think it makes sense that there should be a reserve. Do you have any plans of making a deposit for that reserve on top of the premiums that you expect on October 1?
The rates that we've calculated, or these rates that the actuary calculated, does include, I think that was the origin
Contribution.
of the 7%, does include contingent amounts, which would normally exceed the total of the premium, including the contingent amounts, exceeds the expected claims. So as those contributions come in, a reserve, if you like, of that contingency will be built up.
Okay, and all right, so that's great. Then I guess my only remaining is that, and I know you keep saying Select Care is going to have their own appeals process, but they did testify very clearly that after they're done with their appeals, if they deny a claim, for example, that the governor would have the ability to go in and override that decision. And you gave us one example. You said that's very rare. I expect it to be rare. I think when people hear the government's going to be the insurance company, that's the thing that they worry about, right? That will everybody be treated fairly? Will there be room for some kind of abuse, or not abuse, but maybe just preferential treatment versus fair treatment across the board? And I think we all know, we're very lucky. We're able here on Guam to contact our providers and say, plead with them when we have a case or whatever. But yeah, so I think they just want some assurance. And I think it's actually several doctors who have contacted me very early on in this process saying they think there should be rules. Even doctors are worried about that. So they want rules for that, and I think there should just be some kind of rules, like for what types of claims might we make an exception, or, and if I don't know. But I thought at the hearing you had promised that you would come up with some rules.
Well, we're certainly
on the government side.
Yeah, we're certainly, well, it kind of came out of that discussion that you quoted just now. After that hearing, we went back and spoke to Select Care about their appeal process, and they gave us some more details about the way it works and the way it has worked, and that seemed to be okay. If I'm not sure, because it's really, really so rare, that it's going to be terribly productive to look at some rules, but we'll look at it. But I can't make a rule that says, Governor, you can't touch it. That's not within my authority.
I guess what everybody would like is if there are certain things we might make exceptions on, like air ambulances or whatever it's going to be, that those be set down, and so that in case one is granted, maybe others will be granted as well, something like that. But otherwise, I feel much more assured by the answers and finally information that we've been given. Congratulations to the team, and thank you for the rates that you've negotiated. I think these are excellent rates. And so I'm hoping that, all these other things are actually going to get in place. The stop loss, if there are going to be rules, that the contract, that we are able to see it, hopefully, that it gets executed in advance this time, not after the fact, like a year later. And that, are these rates now set, or they're subject to change?
They're set.
Set, okay, great. Yeah. And so what about impacts on agencies? For example, we just gave status quo budget to a couple agencies, and maybe with increases for their 22%. Those agencies, are their costs of insurance going to increase, and how are you going to handle that if they exceed what their operating expenses are expected to be?
Well, I think it was mentioned this morning that generally most agencies end up with lapses because of vacancies. So I've never had a problem with funding a benefit because of those revolving vacancies and revolving lapses. If it happens, we will certainly look at it, and that would be, that would be a candidate for a governor's transfer. But I really don't think that it's going to be an issue.
All right. Sorry, one more thing I wrote down during lunch is, did you say the TPP's fee, TPP or TPA's fee is $25.36 per person per month, times 12 months, times what, 10,000 subscribers?
Actually, I can answer that, right?
So, Senator, the rate sheet that we provided, it does have the TPA fee. So basically, if you're trying to annualize it, it'll be, of course, on a 26 pay periods, right, times the amount of individuals enrolled in that plan.
No, it isn't.
So that'll be,
Where on this rate sheet is that?
No, it isn't, but
Oh, okay.
it came from another set of information. The TPA fee is $26.25 per month for medical and $2.50 per month for per subscriber. This is the PEPM, right? For pharmacy. The estimate is 12,979 subscribers. So on an annualized basis, it's about 4.4 million together.
Okay. All right, and you think that that's reasonable compared to what we were paying in, let's say, profits for the other way that we were doing this insurance with health insurance carriers?
It seems more than reasonable that it's under 5 million.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much, Speaker. Senator Will Parkinson, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, I had a question some people had been asking me, so I wanted to ask you, can employees still stay with Take Care, or are they automatically enrolled in Select Care in the new program?
hi, Senator. So they will automatically be enrolled in Select Care because they are the only ones being picked up for the TPA, for
Okay.
medical.
All right, so...
I'm sorry, at least for the government of Guam.
At least for the government of Guam. All right. So, looking at the back and forth, because I know I had asked earlier if this new plan was cheaper, and you had mentioned that there was a cost savings because the price of healthcare always goes up every year. So I just wanted to ask you and say, is it correct to say self-insurance would save us millions of dollars over a traditional insurance option? Do I understand that correctly?
Yes, millions, that's a range, obviously.
Yeah, a range,
It's
yes.
not as we explained, it's not a huge difference because it's the difference between like 5 to 10 and 10 to 15. But as I think Mr. Crisostomo testified, year over year, it's going to certainly yield a savings.
Yes. And this analysis was done by Milliman and Associates. This is a large multinational actuarial firm, correct?
Yes, sir, and they're also the actuary for the pension fund.
Okay. I have to ask on the behalf of the consumer, will they receive the same level of benefit and service from Select Care as a third-party administrator as if they were insured traditionally by Select Care?
Yes, so the benefits are the same. It'll be seamless to employees. They will still have the same experience with Select Care under the fully insured plan.
Okay. So we have established that this is the lowest cost option for GovGuam. And this is verified by a national actuary, and subscribers will receive the same or better levels of benefits of coverage. Do I have my facts straight on that?
The benefits are basically the same as the current year, and part of the selection process, under the procurement, was the level of service that the TPA would operate. And we evaluated it, Milliman evaluated it. They actually had like 208 questions that they sent each of the bidders, and they evaluated it and concluded that Select Care would offer, based upon this year's responses, a better level of service than the other bidders, including the price, right? Because price is important.
Yeah. And you said that I heard testimony yesterday that this was unanimously voted on by a body of people.
It was voted on, I'm not sure about the unanimous, there may have been one dissenting member, but the rules allow a majority vote, just like here.
Okay. This bill contemplates a 90-day extension, the bill we have in front of us. Now, you said that the 90-day extension allowed for in the current contract does not apply because we have a new carrier now, and so that provision is no longer in play. Like, we are completely out of the old contract. None of that old contract's vestiges still exist.
Yes, so because we've successfully negotiated and we concluded, so the carriers, the TPA carriers for medical and dental, they're ready for the FY24. So that's why the 90-day provision actually wouldn't take effect into this particular procurement.
I see. So absent that contractual obligation, I have to ask, as a body, can we compel an insurance company by law to provide health insurance at a certain cost fixed by government, even though we don't have a contract with them? I guess that's a question for legal counsel. Is that something we can do? Can we compel an insurance company to provide insurance at a fixed cost if we don't have because there's no contract? So what are we just saying, hey, we need you to provide us health insurance at this price? And as far as you've testified, no one has spoken to any of these contractors, the previous carriers.
Senator, my understanding is that were we subscribing to those provisions of the ACA Act, that might be the case under federal rules, but we didn't, Guam didn't, so they don't apply.
Yeah, so they don't apply at all. So I get, but that's what I'm saying though. I'm trying to understand what are we doing here with this bill? Because this bill is trying to compel an insurance company to provide health insurance, and we don't have a contract with them. No, we are completely out of that contract. So, okay, let me reframe here. If you had to negotiate with insurance companies, and you were mandated by law to do this in 90-day coverage period, do you think that would lead to higher cost?
Well, I think there's 2 points. First of all, a 90-day period may not be enough. We started this process in February, and it was a very exhaustive process. A lot of hard work by the negotiating team. So 90 days probably wouldn't necessarily produce a result. As I mentioned yesterday, negotiating under duress and mandate doesn't really produce a result that is generally commercially acceptable, because everybody knows you're up against a mandate. So
basically,
you're in a weak negotiating position. So it's unlikely. Right?
I know it's difficult to estimate those costs, but you've said if it went with a regular insurance, it could potentially go up 12 to 14%.
What I said was that the total increase, and this came from Milliman, right? The total increase would be 12 to 14%, as opposed to what we're experiencing, a 5 to 10% increase.
Yeah, and if we put you in a poor negotiating position, it could be even worse than that.
Absolutely. I mean, I really would recommend that we don't get put in that position.
Okay. So in this process, you followed legal procurement process to determine that we should have the TPA. We followed the regular procurement process.
Yes, sir. Well, it's the procurement process for this procurement which is set out in law.
Okay. So we have the negotiation team and the procurement process all in place to remove politics from this process, and here we are injecting politics with this bill. Go figure. And You know what? I don't think I could support this bill. Clearly, the self-insurance program is the right path to go for the government and for our health care here. I want to thank you guys for answering the call and, stepping into the kitchen, frankly, and taking the heat and answering the questions and giving us the confidence to, at least for me, to ask my colleagues to soundly reject this bill, and let's move forward to the self-insurance process. With that, Madam Chair, I yield the rest of my time. Thank you.
You're very welcome, Senator Parkinson. I will, before I acknowledge Senator Duenas, Senator Sabina, I'm going to allow you to ask her a couple of your questions.
Ms. Masi, Madam Speaker, Madam Chair. So, yeah, a lot of the questions were asked. I think it's good that the premiums either are status quo or have gone down for the medical care. It was mentioned that, and retirees too. So retirees, there's a huge drop in, I believe, the premiums. So I guess one of the concern, or maybe a concern I have is, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Select Care was still notifying their network providers that the change, and so do we have assurance that the provider network is still going to accept the self-insurance? Do we have that assurance?
Yes, Senator. So we do have the insurance. In fact, I've been constantly communicating with Select Care just to verify, and they did reassure us. Like I expressed earlier, they also picked up Express Care locally, which is not currently covered. They have Strap, Capiani. Their provider network is still the same, and they are ready to have those communications. Also, actually, in fact, I think they already started communications with the providers just to show the continuity of care come 10/1/23.
Okay. And then regards to Take Care. So I know they are still in communication or negotiations if I'm correct, if I'm not misunderstanding it. So FHP, for instance, they're still trying to see if they're going to be a network provider as well. Is that correct?
Yes. So in fact, from my understanding, Select Care did reach out to FHP Clinic to start the conversations. I believe they didn't get any feedback, but that communication will continue to into the fiscal year. So at least that's the hope, is to get FHP under the provider network.
Okay. So for the out-of-network providers, how are they going to be handled? Is it out-of-pocket costs and get reimbursement later, or what is that going to look like?
So if providers go, so we have what we call a participating provider network and a non-participating provider network. If members go out, which is the non-participating, they will be paying a 70-30 split, but it'll be off the UCR rates, which is what we call as usual customary rates. So members can potentially still go, but then, be aware that they will end up paying a little bit more because there's actually no contracted rates in place.
Okay, so the 70-30 split means the government employee is going to pay 30%?
No, the member will pay 30% and the plan will pay 70%. As opposed if you go to a participating provider network, if you're on the co-share, then it's a 20-80 split. But I have to stress that it'll be a 70-30 based on the UCR rates.
Okay, and the rates for the in-provider network are lower. Is that what you're implying?
Yeah, absolutely, because they have a contract with those provider networks.
Okay. All right, thank you for that. Do we have an estimate of how much was paid for healthcare in general as a whole with the government, whether it was in network or outside network last year, or this maybe 2023 fiscal year?
We don't have a total in front of us of the claims, Senator, but they are reported every month, and I believe they're posted on the legislature website. But we'll certainly afterwards go and total them up.
Okay, thank you. In regards to pharmacy costs, so is there going to be a copay? Because I believe, was there a copay before and now there is, or is there not a copay still?
So Well, for preventive medication, it's a zero copayment. So there is a listing of preventive medication that's required federally, and so that is at a zero copayment. If you are on the 1500 plan, then your medications are straight up copayment. If you're on the 2000 plan, then all of that is subject to deductible. So the member will have to pay the full amount. And when all of that adds up to include the medical care plus a prescription, then that member will go into either a 2080 for doctor's visits or a copayment for a prescription. So it varies between which plan you're under for the copayment. The 1500 is already based off a copayment plan.
Okay, thank you. And then the question I have too in regards to the special fund. So, you know, we've seen where special funds get raided. And what kind of protections can we have to ensure that nobody's dipping their hands in the cookie jar?
Well, this administration not only has not done that, but we actually restored the 911 fund, which previously was used to fund the general fund. You know, there are rules, there are laws governing this. You know, we're going to follow those laws.
Okay, so, you know, I know I asked a question earlier about ERISA, that you said it doesn't apply, but there was a case in the CNMI when in regards to retirement fund, where the federal government did weigh in that they used ERISA. So how do we bridge that gap? If ERISA does apply for retirees, and then we're saying here that this doesn't apply?
Well, I thank Senator Blas for allowing me to correct that statement, that there is one part of ERISA that does apply, which is the non-discrimination rules under ERISA. No other parts apply. The pension fund is another matter as to whether ERISA applies. I'm not an expert on the pension fund, let alone the pension fund for the CNMI, but the CNMI pension fund, if you review their audit report, it's really rather confusing, but I don't think the auditors have been able to persuade the CNMI government that it's even a fund.
Yeah, I guess maybe the point too the concern I had too was asked by the speaker in regards to, you know, making sure that there's rules and we go by the rules, right? And is there a way that we can put more safeguards? I guess that's safeguards in ensuring that the money's going to be there and for the intended purpose. I mean, that's ultimately what I'm looking for. So, I mean, basically, I know Select Care said they're going to follow their appeals process, but then there's a point where it could be potentially overrided. So, but if we abuse it too many times, then that's going to really affect the financial stability. So is there anything that DOA can do to ensure that, you know, to, I guess, ensure safeguards?
Obviously, HIPAA rules apply, so we have to be careful both the information that we get and how we deal with that information. But I don't see any reason why we can't collate some information about, you know, the number of appeals and the results, whether they were upheld or not upheld, over the course of the contract period, if that would be helpful to senators.
Yeah, so I think that would be very helpful. And I noticed that in our CRE report, is this special fund included in that reporting?
Well, not yet, because there hasn't got anything in it, but it will be.
It will be,
Yeah.
okay, that's good. In regards to the stop-loss insurance, are they going to require, maybe, I don't know if you can answer this now, but is it going to be paid monthly or some other frequency or time period? Is it going to be at the end of the year, monthly?
I'm sure any insurer is going to want to be paid periodically. Since it relates to the volume of claims, I'm sure it will be adjusted each month as the claims come through.
Okay. I think those are my questions, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Senator.
Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Perez. Senator Dueñas, thank you. You are recognized at this time.
Sidus Masi, Madam Chair. Maybe along the lines of the speaker's questions, I might ask it a little different. It's because of something I've been struggling with in reviewing the government share. I don't see a lot of 70-30 share. I see more 90-10, perhaps as low as 80, maybe 20. Is this the same rate sheet as fiscal year 2023 in terms of government share?
No.
Is there a percentage higher than it is than the 2023?
Well, the last adjustment we make would change the percentage share.
Given that when the fiscal year 2024 budget was contemplated, was this government rate what the agencies were going to base their budgets on?
I don't know what rate they base their budgets on. In answer to the speaker, I responded that there has been a change. But as I pointed out this morning, that change is completely attenuated because the general fund part of this is only a proportion. So I feel that the agencies are capable of dealing with both the increases and the decreases.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to get to, Mr. Byrne, is we tried to pass a balanced budget. And in this contemplation, this could be in the millions. The ability to afford it agency by agency is one thing, but how it affects the government revenues overall. And I'm asking this question in preparation for next year's fiscal year budget, because I think that this body should do a line item appropriation for this, at least using a 3-year average. Other than that, I think we're really setting ourselves up for unanticipated millions of dollars in difference, because obviously, well, my last question, then I'm just going to have a few comments. Obviously, in this bill, and there was representations from the committee, when it was amended, this 7% was an anticipation because of the rates that had already been adjusted or anticipated within the rate sheets that you've provided. So I'm just going to ask you a direct question. Is this 7% associated with what you've already contemplated in either the government share? It has to be government share because the employee share now has equalized.
Yes, it's contemplated in the total rate.
So is this in the, because now it's not 5.7, it's 7, because if you anticipate it's, or either that or it's averaged out between the two. So is this the total increase that you're anticipating across the entire plan?
Well, thank you, Senator. I was going to add that the retiree, the RSP share didn't change because it was 0 before for a retiree and 0 afterwards. It was only certain employees where the percentage that the original increase that was going to be borne by Take Care current subscribers only affected, even like I was saying, it doesn't affect each agency because of the different sources of funds. It didn't even affect every category that you're looking at here. As I say, the RSP one didn't change. In the budget, there's a separate appropriation for retiree pensions, and that didn't change. So the budget is firm for that.
I'm aware of that, Ed Byrne, but the active employees have a much larger pool of employees, so that aggregate change could be significant, and we'll see as we go. Obviously, it seems to me that you've contemplated that with the 14% avoided cost of profits. I just want to make a few comments in closing. You know, as we close out this portion, you know, it's been really interesting to have received, I believe, 3 miracles in this entire process of the introduction of this bill. The first miracle was at the roundtable hearing. We found out, and this goes to my good colleague's question, how can you operate without a contract? The contract was just signed today, 11 months after it was executed. We're almost done with the fiscal year, and you operated a full contract under medicine and under dental without a contract. So let's be clear, that happened. There was a contract, but it wasn't a consummated contract in terms of being signed by all parties. The second miracle is the fact that on the roundtable hearing, it was contemplated a large increase for Take Care members and a decrease for Select Care members, and magically now there is no increase for Take Care members, but that's a good miracle to have. The third miracle, I would say, and is going to be to my final point, is there is clearly a communication in the public now that those under the Take Care plan can contemplate one of two things. Either being an out-of-network subscriber, and whatever that's going to entail, or maybe another miracle, which would be a possibility of Select Care working out an agreement, which probably would be the best miracle to happen with Take Care in terms of trying to levelize that risk and also the benefits as well. So as I close this out, whatever the disposition of this bill is, I will say it this way. As a good mentor of mine and somebody who I admire very well, Robert Klitsky, an esteemed lawyer and a member of this august body in the past, said that the way the legislature communicates is through the bills that it introduces. And I would say of one thing we've accomplished through this process is we have arrived at communication, and should have happened months, if not the beginning of the last year, because of 2007 and the execution of this now, and we learned about it really in weeks, if not a couple of months. So we've at least accomplished miracles, and we've accomplished communication, and for that, Madam Chair, I guess I will say I'm at least pleased regardless of the disposition. And there is no need for this 7% in this bill as contemplated. We could probably vote the bill up or down without it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Duenas. Senator Frank Blas, Minority Leader, you have the final floor.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the presentations. Mr. Byrne, do you have any paperwork or thing that would show a delineation of the roles and responsibilities between the government of Guam and the third-party administrators?
That would be the contract.
Okay, so there is. You have that. Okay. Is there a way that we can get a copy of that?
It's a draft at the moment.
That's fine. We can work with the draft.
I'm not sure that we're allowed under. I would have to take advice from the Attorney General.
Okay. And the reason why, because, you know, it's interesting. Mr. Cameron this morning, one of his quotes that he has is, "This gives us a way to manage the dollars." And I just want to find how we're going to be able to manage the dollars if in the conversation we had, you know, there's a lot of responsibility placed on the third-party administrator, and I just wanted to know what the role is and the responsibility of the government is to be able to assure. Okay? I appreciate if we can be able to manage the dollars, but I'm not sure as to how we're going to be able to do that.
I'm sorry, Senator. I had a thought earlier when Senator Chris Duenas was speaking in reference to the infusion of the 7%. When we went in as the government agencies...
Well, first off, let me make one thing very clear. This is not about the procurement. The procurement's done. Your third-party administrators have been selected. This is not a contest or a bill that's because somebody doesn't agree with a third party. That's got nothing to do with this. What this bill has everything to do with is the government's role. That's what I'm talking about. So if you're going to go back to February, I hope it's just about what the government's role is in this plan, not in the procurement of the TPA. That's not the question. I know Select Care and I know Netcare. They're both very esteemed and they're both very knowledgeable companies that I know they know what they're going to do. I just need the assurance of the government that the government knows what it's doing and it's getting itself into. So you can proceed along those lines.
Yes, Senator. I just wanted to make one clarity in reference to the infusion of the 7%. When the government of Guam was posturing its projection of costs as a budget for each government agency, the experience we were dealing with at the time was what was our current rate of insurance and benefits. And so when we were doing employee to employee, all the benefits, we utilized the number that is already on the table. So there's definitely a decrease from this particular. So we would not need that 7% increase. And I'm just saying that we overshot what we would need per employee's benefits. We in a sense, right now it's somewhat padded to some degree. So yeah, I think we're okay.
No, I agree with you. I don't think that we need the 7%. Okay, so there's no question about that there. You know, Mr. Byrne, I just wanted to know something. In your August 18th, or when did you submit this letter? In your August 18th letter to the legislature, talking about, you know, the health insurance program, you mentioned the HSA active employee rate set at 2024, 20% higher than the base plan FY 2023. And that the PPO 1500 active employee rate set at FY 2024 is 20% higher than the base plan of FY 2023. Okay, 20% higher. Then we have this that shows significantly lower. I appreciate this. But what was the impetus and how do we go from 20% higher to significantly lower in a matter of 10 days?
I guess Senator Duenas would think that's another miracle.
Miracle, huh?
I never thought of myself as a miracle worker, but maybe I have a new calling. Can I answer your last question about the administrator first? We employ a third-party administrator for two basic reasons. One, we don't have the resources to do this ourselves, and we're not experts. Secondly, because we want to use their network, not our network, and their contracts with providers. We might decide at some future time, or we might not, that arrangement either suits us or doesn't suit us. But at this moment, as we start down this path, we use a third-party administrator so that we can get it done without having a whole lot of people that we have to employ. You know, governments have to decide whether they subcontract something or do it themselves. You know, we have our own detention facility. Some other governments subcontract that, generally not very successfully, but that's a decision they make. This is a decision we make. We try to, like the actuaries, employ the experts. Okay. In answer to your second question, we listen too. We get lots of information. People talk to us also. So we reevaluated the whole thing. We're the employers. We want to make sure that our employees are happy. They want to come to work. And more importantly, and really most importantly, that we continue to have people that want to work in the government.
Okay. With regard to now the cost savings, you know, I'm going to again, this is reference to your letter that you sent to the legislature. You know, when you talk about, I guess, estimated annual medical and pharmacy premium rates for FY 2023 and FY 2024, that in FY 2023, it was pegged at about $135,033,000. And that in FY 2024, you say it's between 141,454,000 dollars to $155,749,000. That's basically an increase of either 6.58 million or $20,716,000. Where do we find the savings as a government in that? And these are your numbers. I'm just referencing the numbers you gave us.
And remember, that's all based on enrollment. We can't be sure.
Please understand, like I said before, Senator, these are estimated numbers because we don't know the enrollment.
Even in your estimates, Mr. Byrne, you still show that there's a significant increase in the millions between 2023 and 2024.
Yes, and as I mentioned this morning, there is an increase because medical cost increases.
No, these are based on your rates. These are rates. These are not medical costs. These are your premium rates.
But they must drive the medical costs.
Oh, where did you get this from?
Medical costs.
I need to point that out because that's, again, not a whole lot of time here. And then, when do you intend to get your stop-loss insurance?
I answered that.
No. You said
Speaker.
eventually, but
No, I said by the beginning of the policy plan period.
Most policies along those lines are going to look at basically what ratios are. Okay, are you going to get policy based on individual or aggregate?
Again, I answered
It was aggregate,
the speaker
right?
that it was individual.
It's going to be on individual. So a lot of times, as far as the individual, what they want to basically see is at what threshold do you figure that's going to be at?
Right.
Okay, which goes back to the question I had yesterday. What's your medical ratio? What is going to be your ratio that you're going to determine that you've reached that threshold to be able to activate?
I think it more likely that we're going to look at the very high value claims, and usually there are about less than 20 really high value claims, by which I mean over $500,000, and buy insurance for claims at that aggregate level. It's got nothing to do with the medical loss ratio.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does, because then you have to determine as to when your threshold is. What is going to be your threshold? And basically, how can you prove that you're not going to be able to get it based on your premiums, on what you've collected? What you're doing is you're covering your costs. You're covering your ability to be able to pay based on what your costs are. So what is that threshold? What's that level?
I really think it's simpler than that, Senator. You have a claim, right? As I say, there is less, I believe, but I will go and check this and tell you, there's less than 20 claims over $500,000. These are disaster claims, right, where people have very high medical costs for one reason or other. We can bear those claims up to a certain level. I don't have a number from the actuaries yet, but if you assume that it was $500,000, we would buy a stop loss for claims that exceed $500,000. And I think it's as simple as that.
Well, I get to the point here, okay? Because as we get closer and closer to the rollout date, it's becoming more and more obvious for me that, granted, and thank you for the miracles that happened because we've got the rate sheets out. Hopefully in the very near future, don't worry, I only have 1 second. Then as far as the benefits claims, okay, because that's the other question I have. What is the benefits going to look like for the employees? And then the cost savings as well as the plans. So I think there are a number of things, and as far as this checklist, that need to be checkmarked before there can be any confidence in the rollout of the plan. Okay?
The benefits, as I mentioned, are going to be the same as this year, and the third-party administrator is producing a brochure for the open enrollment that has all that detail in.
Okay, but I'm concerned about a lot of the take care members who are now worried about whether or not, it goes back to the simple question that you have in the FAQ. Can I have the same medical provider? It really is uncomfortable when you say, for the most part. Okay?
Yes. I actually have struggled with that since I think I mentioned at the hearing that when I first came to the States, that was the first problem I had to deal with. And I actually was quite surprised when one of the employees came to me when we actually had a policy in place. Oh, I have to change my doctor. Since I've lived here now for enough years and have suffered certain policies myself, I understand the question. But as I said, our goal is to make sure that we, like it says, for the most part, but a negotiation takes two parties. We had two physicians who came to the public hearing and said, based upon I'm not sure what, saying, well, we not sure we're going to take that insurance. That's not a negotiation. That's not an accommodation. That's just a statement.
I appreciate it, and we have to recognize that's operational. That's your side of the house, not mine. Okay? It's blinking red, Madam Speaker, because I guess that means I have to stop talking.
Thank you, Minority Leader. Colleagues, at this time, we've exhausted the second round, and we'd like to thank the panel members for being here. We'll go ahead and take a moment's recess as we excuse the panel members, and we'll come back to do the final round of comments. Oh. The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Colleagues, there was one lingering amendment. There are no other amendments on the floor. I will entertain the motion that was proffered by, it was one of you two, by Senator Dueñas, and then I will open the floor for final comments. I'll go around the room again, and then we'll close out. So Senator Dueñas, there was a motion to delete Section 3. I yield to you. You may proceed.
Yeah, Madam Chair, we were in the midst of course, debating that motion, and then we, fortunately, to get information and put more information on the record, went to Committee of the Whole. And so now that we're in the Committee of the Whole, I want to reiterate my motion to delete Section 3 from the bill.
On that motion, anyone wishing to speak? If not, are there any objections? There is an objection. All those in favor for deleting Section 3 signify by raising your hand. 4, 5, 6, 7. Motion carries. Anyone else wishing to speak on the main bill? If not, the bill on 154 154-37, Senator Blas, on the motion, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that Bill number 154-37 LS, as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, again, Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, and amended in the Committee of the Whole with a recommendation of the committee to be placed in the third reading file.
On the motion with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to place Bill number 154-37 LS as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, Haganyan Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, and amended in the Committee of the Whole on the third reading file. Are there any objections? There is an objection. All those in favor, please signify by raising your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Motion carries. We will take a moment's recess. Senator Blas, we're not in recess, right? We're in recess? The Committee of the Whole is back from recess. Senator Blas, I will recognize you again to rise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move to rise from the Committee of the Whole with a recommendation that Bill number 154-37 LS, as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, again, Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, and amended in the Committee of the Whole, be placed in the third reading file.
On that motion, are there any objections? Seeing or hearing none, motion carries.
We're back from recess. Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, you are recognized.
Si Diyos Masi, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wish to report to the body after the deliberation on Bill number 154-37 LS as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, Hagåtña Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, and amended in the Committee of the Whole with the recommendation of the Committee of the Whole to place on the third reading voting file, or third reading.
On that motion to place the bill on the third reading file, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Can we get a motion to vote without engrossment?
Madam Speaker, I move that we vote on this bill without engrossment.
On that motion, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. Ready? Okay. Okay, Majority Leader, Senator Shelton, you are recognized.
Sujus Masi, Madam Speaker, I move to excuse members not present for the vote.
On the motion to excuse members not present for the vote, is there an objection? Senator Brown, you are recognized.
Madam Speaker, in all fairness, because we had an issue last time we were asked to excuse members, can we have a reason as to why the members are absent? Because I don't want us to be condoning the absence of a member only to find out otherwise that what we were informed is not the case.
Majority Leader.
I can't speak to that, Madam Speaker.
I can. Well, I only see one member not present, and that member did submit to me a notice of off-island travel. So on the motion to excuse those members not present for a vote, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion carries. All right. So we are now on the third reading. We're going to consider Bill number 154-37 LS. And just a reminder, Section 3 was deleted from this bill. All right, clerks, please read the title.
Bill number 154-37 LS, as substituted by the Committee on Human Resources, Hagåtña Revitalization, Regional Affairs, Public Libraries, Telecommunications, Technology, and Federal and Foreign Affairs, and amended in the Committee of the Whole. Introduced by Frank Blosch Jr., Christopher M. Dueñas. An act to extend the fiscal year 2023 Government of Guam Group Health Insurance Plan DOA HRD EB RFP GHI 23001 to December 31, 2023.
Roll call.
Senator Barnett. Senator Barnett excused. Senator Blas. Senator Blas, aye. Senator Brown. Senator Brown, nay. Senator Dueñas. Senator Dueñas, aye. Senator Fisher. Senator Fisher, aye. Senator Lujan. Senator Lujan, nay. Vice Speaker Munya Barnes. Vice Speaker Munya Barnes, nay. Senator Parkinson. Senator Parkinson, nay. Senator Perez. Senator Perez, nay. Senator Kanata. Senator Kanata, pass. Senator San Augustine. Senator San Augustine, nay. Senator San Nicolas. Senator San Nicolas, aye. Senator Shelton. Senator Shelton, nay. Senator Titagui. Senator Titagui, nay. Speaker Terlahi. Speaker Terlahi, nay. Senator Kanata. Senator Kanata, nay.
All right, colleagues, Bill number 154-37LS received 4 ayes and 10 nays and 1 excuse. Bill number 154-37LS failed by the body. Majority Leader, you are recognized. Well, we are now on extension of remarks. Is there anyone who would like to give extension of remarks? Senator Brown, and then Vice Speaker.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I certainly did want to comment on this bill, even though I did not vote in favor of it. But I do want to relay my appreciation for my 2 Republican colleagues, Senator Frank Blas and Senator Chris Duenas, in introducing this bill. Because where we were a couple days ago with regards to information awareness of the upcoming implementation of this new insurance plan, self-insurance with the government of Guam, we certainly have far more information today. And I have to say, moving forward, this is something I think we all need to keep an eye on to see how this program for our health care of our people get implemented, what the impact's going to be within our healthcare community. I mean, we certainly have heard the concerns that some providers out there are saying they may not participate. We'll see how that goes and what the response is and what the sense of comfort level is that our people are going to have. I'm sure we all, if they stick to the rate card that's provided, and again, that's something that was very much clarified through this effort of this particular bill, with regards to what our people, our government of Guam retirees and what our employees are going to be expected to pay this upcoming year. And I think we're all glad to hear that there's a reduction in that. But at the same time, there are issues that we need to look at with regards to how do we ensure the program is properly implemented within the government, ensure that the funds that are supposed to be set aside as far as the government share for the employees is also secured, so we don't have anyone dipping into that money for anything other than what's intended for health care. And then also verify, even though the Director of Administration mentioned that it'd be a very rare occasion where the governor may have to be involved in making a decision on a particular case. I think we need to look further into that and maybe address further information, because I do not want to see, I don't think most people want to see, including our retirees and our employees, that the healthcare process or who gets covered for what becomes politicized. I think that's what's most concerning. When you ask most people, do you trust the government of Guam to properly operate and essentially administer your health care, everyone's like, oh no. As I mentioned the other day, not only no, hell no. But the information provided, if we move forward, I mean, I'm not totally going to say I'm comfortable, but I'm aware, and I think that's the intent, and I think there's a major intent in the introduction of this bill, is getting that awareness and clarifying some issues. We do know, of course, there was a briefing a couple of weeks ago on this particular bill, and a lot of information was provided, but some of the information was inconsistent and changed when the Director of Administration and 2 other representatives were here from the committee responding to questions that were provided by members of the body. And so I'm hopeful that, as they said that officially on the record, that what information they have provided us is factual and true. And we'll see. I mean, I look forward to the briefings to our employees and our retirees in the weeks ahead that will be provided at the Guam Museum, so that people can get information and be aware. Because, as we are aware, Madam Speaker, healthcare is very fundamental. I mean, if there's any piece of legislation we're going to address on the floor of this legislature, this has direct impact to our people, to their families, to their health and welfare. And that's something, it's important to take the time that we deliberate these issues. And so I don't look at the non-passage of this bill today as a failure. I think there's a lot of other positive benefits that have come out, and we are all collectively more aware. Our community is collectively more aware, and they have an opportunity to get more information. And there are issues, as I mentioned, we need to go back and probably address through statute so that we can ensure the protection of our people throughout this whole process. But it's something we are mindful of, I think, in this upcoming year with the implementation, including ensuring that contracts get signed prior to execution, because that's concerning. If they're indeed what was responded to yesterday, that there are contracts that have not been signed and yet services have been provided, I think we know that's not how government's supposed to run. I'm hoping moving forward that things are put in place as they should be and as they should be under law. So with that, again, I commend my 2 Republican colleagues, Senator Blas and Senator Chris Duenas, for actually stepping out in spite of a lot of controversy and putting this bill forth. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Senator Brown. Vice Speaker, you're recognized, and then Senator Fisher.
Si Juice Masi, Madam Speaker, I'll probably speak on lighter note and thank the previous speaker for her sentiments on the action of the body in making sure that the public is truly given the awareness of how the insurance will run for our government employees and our retirees. But this Monday, Madam Speaker, is a public holiday, which is called Labor Day, and it's celebrated the first Monday of September, honoring all those laborers, all those employees who've worked hard, and I'd be remiss if I didn't just extend an undunkel and a situs masi to all the employees of government of Guam, and of course with the federal government, and just all the workers out there who give a lot and for their employers. I wish them well, I wish them the very best, and God bless for all that they do for their employers. So thank you, Madam Speaker, for giving me that opportunity to share with the people of Guam a blessed and happy Labor Day to all the employees of Guam. Sainamasi.
Sainamasi, Vice Speaker. Senator Fisher, you're recognized, and then Senator Lujan.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to also join in thanking and congratulating Senators Blas and Duenas for, really taking the last step to protect the insured under what I'm calling Adelup care, doing everything they could to make sure the program is successful and making sure that our employees in the government of Guam and the retirees have the best health care we can afford to them. I'm just going to wait a minute until...
Colleagues, could we please have some order? Colleagues, it's kind of loud. Please proceed, Senator.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. Again, I'd like to thank the two senators for what they have done to protect our government of Guam employees as well as the retirees. The time for bickering, partisan bickering, is over. We now, all of us, have to wish the governor the very, very best of luck in unrolling this program, which is coming as a surprise to thousands of people on island. I think we all wish for the best under this new Adelup care. The only way we're really going to know if it works is if those people who are covered under this insurance policy let the governor and all the senators know if they're having a problem with it, because that is a premier responsibility for everybody in this chamber to protect those people who depend upon us. So I wish us all luck on this. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Lujan.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I too rise and commend our caucus leader, Senator Frank, and also Senator Chris, for putting forth this bill. When we got a public hearing, the information that was brought forth by DOA, Mr. Burns, was terrible. Wasn't forthcoming. It was inaccurate, and left us more confused than in the beginning. As a matter of fact, from the information that we got that night, and as folks were asking us to tell them what this Gov Guam self-insurance was going to be like, I was giving out inaccurate information based on the information that we got that night. And if it wasn't for the introduction of this bill, we wouldn't have been able to flush out the truth and what it really was. They said at one point that one insurance company's rates were going to slightly increase, and yet another was going to come down. And we find out that one rate is going to stay the same, while the other is going to come down substantially. Over this course, it wasn't presented for the people to understand what
what the insurance was going to be and whether their provider was still going to be the same, they still have their own provider, or what the rates were going to be. That's what people wanted to know. They wanted to know what their rates were going to be and whether their provider will still be able to provide that health care for them. That wasn't flushed out in the public hearing. We didn't know. We were more confused, and like I said, at that time, from what we learned at that time, at least I know I was giving out inaccurate information. And so I'm glad that we broke out to the Committee of the Whole and this bill came before us, because everything that was said that night was reversed. Now, rates are lower. We absolutely saw the rates. And as in the very beginning, we said, hey, isn't this kind of like what we had before? Isn't this a insurance that will be with Select Care? That's what it was. We knew what it was, but nobody wanted to say it. Nobody wanted to tell the truth. The truth was right there. But when you give out misinformation, inaccurate information, that's what confuses people. And for us, and even for me, who maybe knows a little more of what is going on because we have the folks here, even I was even more confused. So I'm glad, and I commend again our caucus leader, Frank, and Senator Chris, for helping flush this out, to be able to get the truth out on really who is going to insure us and what the rates are going to be. And with that said, Madam Speaker, again, I want to thank my colleagues for doing as such, because if it wasn't for such, we wouldn't have brought it out. And I'll probably still be giving out inaccurate information. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you very much, Senator Lujan. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Senator San Nicolas, you are recognized.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too also want to commend the author, the co-sponsor. Very well done. Unfortunately, the bill didn't go through. I supported the bill. I have some reservations. You know what they didn't discuss much here is the continuity of care and the patient and doctor relationship that may be affected by us moving forward with this plan. And I wanted to take a more humanitarian approach. What happens when people who are subscribers to Take Care, what happens to them? What happens when they find out that the new plan deems Take Care an outside provider? And then what happens when they go to get medication? You know, the problem is that they might pay hundreds of dollars out of pocket, our GovGuam subscribers. And what happens between that relationship between the doctor and patient? Continuity of care for people who are subscribers to FHP. I wanted to take a more humanitarian approach to this. I wanted to make sure, you know, during the pandemic, everybody says an abundance of caution, out of an abundance of caution. And it's not right that we you know, think or toy with people's medical care, especially those most vulnerable. So that's the angle in which I voted today. But I do commend the author and the sponsor for getting the information out there and the manner in which we plan to roll this out. But that's all I have to say about that, and I wish the plan rolls out and is a success just as much as the dental and medication portion of self-insuring. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Siniclas. Senator Minority Leader Frank Blas, and then Legislative Secretary, then Senator Speaker.
Thank you, Madam Vice Speaker. You know, Madam Vice Speaker, and I appreciate the accolades and the appreciation by my colleagues. But, you know, we are in this body, you need to have basically a vehicle and a platform to be able to continue to work with it. And Madam Speaker, I have to thank you and your staff, okay, along with the staff of Senator Dueñas and mine. It was a long, rough, tough road. And I'm sure that your offices as well as mine, you know, receiving the myriad and the number of different calls from a number of people who were concerned. And they were concerned about their health care. They're concerned about whether or not they're going to be able to continue, how much it's going to cost, whether they're going to be able to afford it. And that's what this whole thing was for. And in the defeat, there was light. There's information now that was brought forth that bring people a little bit more comfort. Still a lot of questions that they have enough time, I'm hoping they have enough time to be able to resolve and to take care of. But then there's also, it gave us an opportunity to look at, it's a new process. And we need to do our part to be able to ensure that at the end of the day, the health care is being provided that they need, and the tax dollars that's being utilized is spent wisely. So, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Speaker, thank you very much. The accolades are just as much yours as it is with us. And to my colleagues, no matter how you voted, in your participation with the conversation, it helped to bring to light a lot of the information that the people were asking for. That's what this process is for. Okay? You know, one of the things I learned many years ago, it's not in the kind of legislation you introduce, but it's in the kind of communication that you have. Okay? And I know that it was rough, but, you know, thank you for being there and thank you for helping us out. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Minority Leader. Speaker Terlahi, you are acknowledged at this time.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. And to my colleagues and, of course, the staff here at the Guam Legislature and the OFB staff, I want to say thank you for all the work on the budget. It took us quite a while, so I know it was tough. For me personally, it was very intense. It was intense work that we had to do, and there were some intense moments and days, of course. But I think our biggest challenge as a branch really has been during this term to ensure that we are getting accurate information that we can act on. It's really a matter of transparency. And I think we have to continue to push for transparency across the government, not just for our sake so that we can have information that's reliable and that we can rely on when we act on behalf of the people of Guam, but information for the people of Guam. So I want to thank all of you for your support when we stood firm in demanding checks and balances on certain things, including lowering premiums for employees and retirees. Very important work that was done because of the hearing that was held, because of the bill that was introduced, because of the work that we did here. And that was quite a significant change. We were also able to get critical information regarding the continuity of health care to those who are suffering illnesses now and very worried about this transition period. We were able, during our budget proceedings, to finally get mold mitigation moving in the schools, able to get money, again, well, appropriated, hopefully it gets there, but able to get money to the hospital despite their denial that a real crisis exists, able to fund law enforcement while we are, every family impacted by crimes. And it's especially egregious during times when we still have a multitude of families that are suffering from loss of housing from the typhoon. We have not recovered fully from that at all. Many families are still dislocated, still in great need. We still have so much work to do. We were able to take some special interests and convert it into more of a community interest. I think that's what we should always aim to do. But I want to thank each of you individually for, everyone asks me how it is working in here, and I say there are some good days, there are some bad days, but I think in the end, I very much appreciate hard work. So I appreciate those who did the research and every single day showed up and did the hard work that they had to do in order to make their own decisions on these matters that affect everyone on Guam. And again, to the OFB staff, thank you for the months of work that you put into this budget. And I think we can always strive in our next budget session to do better. So I always want to do better, faster, maybe more creative on certain things like, crime. So we'll see. But again, happy Labor Day as well to all of the employees of the government of Guam and across Guam in every capacity. Situas Maasi for all that you have done for the people of Guam and for your patience with us throughout this process. I very much appreciate that, for your input to us throughout this process, especially those in the government of Guam who are trying to tell us what's actually going on while we hear other information sometimes. So that I very much appreciate, and I say keep it coming. Again, we're going to push for transparency so that we can have the real facts as we act. And thank you again to all my colleagues in Situas Maasi.
Buen provecho, Speaker Terlahi. Legislative Secretary Shelton, I'll recognize you at this time.
Situas Maasi, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank you, Madam Vice Speaker, as the chair of the committee that heard Bill number 154, and the panel that spoke before us the last several days to act on this bill. I'd also like to thank the bill's authors and all of the conversation that we had here among our colleagues over the last couple of days. It was a long process, and taking it back to the start of the budget, I'd like to, especially on this Labor Day weekend, thank our team here at the legislature for what they've done. As the speaker mentioned, it's been months in the making, and I'd like to give a special Undunkluna Situas Maasi to our chair of the Office of Finance and Budget, Senator Joe San Agustin, and his entire staff, and our central team here at the legislature who made this possible. I'd also like to thank our caucus here in the legislature for the work that they did over this last month, coming together to pass a budget that prioritizes the people of Guam, and that we hope will be signed into law over the next several days to provide $248 million to the Department of Education, $51 million for the police department, $38 million for the fire department, with a new cycle of firefighters, a new cycle of DOC corrections officers, $198 million to public health, and another $30 million to the hospital. We worked very closely with Senator San Agustin and with all of our leadership, Speaker Terlahi, Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes, to bring a spending plan forward that also allows the governor $60 million transfer authority, the flexibility that she needs to operate the government of Guam. And I want to thank our other colleagues who brought light to many issues, who debated strongly, passionately, though we did not agree on many things. The conversation was very spirited, and that's what we need here in the legislature, spirited debate that brings us to the best work that we can possibly do for the people of Guam. And so I want to thank everyone again for allowing us to comb through every single revenue source available to strike a balanced budget that places our people as the priority here in the legislature. So again, Sejus Masi, Senator San Augustine, Speaker Terlahi, Vice Speaker Tina Munya Barnes, and all of our colleagues who made this possible. And again, to our team for your dedication, your devotion to this branch of government. We would not be able to do this without you. Happy Labor Day to all of you and to all of the people of Guam. Sejus Masi.
Sejus Masi, Legislative Secretary Shelton. Senator Duenas, you are recognized.
Sejus Masi, Madam Chair. You know, as I was going through, I figured kind of my closing remarks were in my discussion with the panel, which I was very thankful for. And first of all, I want to thank all of our colleagues. I think this was an excellent process to bring about the results that we have. But I talked about the 3 miracles that happened. I forgot the 4th miracle, and that is I got a phone call today from an uncle of mine who said he looked at the rate card in the paper and said, "Hi, boy, Sejus Masi." He's a retiree, and his select care went from $50 down to 0 per pay period. So that's the 4th miracle in my life. He was very happy. You know, Madam Chair, I like to listen to Jerry Roberts on The Point every morning on Ray Gibson's show. And his extra point today talked about how there really only is failure in not trying. And he used very many examples of leaders that have come before us that talk about exactly what it means to take risks and to try. And I got to say, the experience with Senator Blas and myself and this entire journey was exactly that. Although this bill failed today, it was everything that we learned that became truly, absolutely worth the experience. And of course, all of the things that transpired to make the great changes that ended up coming about. We have it on the record now, Madam Chair. I actually saved a lot of the paperwork inside of my computer bag just to make sure that I have even my hard copy that was debated on the floor. But in closing, Madam Speaker, I also want to express undongkaluna Sejus Masi for all of our folks who labor in the government and that are going to be celebrating over this weekend. Please be safe, have fun with your families and friends and co-workers, and enjoy your holiday. And once again, Madam Speaker, to you, to the committee chair, Vice Speaker, you know, very professionally done, I believe, and something that really bore a lot of fruit throughout this process. I've had some disagreements with the budget, but we'll see how that goes forward. I know that we certainly strived. And with that, Madam Speaker, once again, Sejus Masi, and God bless the people of Guam.
Sejus Masi, Senator. Senator Taitagui, you are recognized.
Sejus Masi, Madam Speaker. I too would like to share my adonkalu Sejus Masi to the staff. All those who worked this budget. It was probably one of the longest budget sessions we've had that I've been as a legislature. 4 weeks of being in budget. It was quite long. But this is the one area that we all were voted to do, to pass a budget. Once a year we come together, and I was hoping more people would be here every single day, and I commend those who decided to come every single day to be a part of this budget, to be a part of Guam and moving forward with better health care, public safety, education. This is all the things that we were put in this position by the people of Guam to address. What we're not put in this position is to fund areas of the government with monopoly money, or money that hasn't even been realized, money that hasn't even been audited. It seems to be been a practice in the last 3 years, 4 years, that we're doing, and this needs to stop. If you're standing up here saying that, we gave money to this agency or DOE, we gave them more. No, you did not give them money. What you did was give them a hope that there's going to be money there, but not real money. There is something even more important that we did not address. The emergency in front of us, and that's the hospital. The hospital is in an emergency state right now, and it's unfortunate that we did not address that with any kind of funding that could be realized right away. You know, we have a rainy day fund for emergency purposes. Why didn't we do that? Why didn't we use the rainy day fund for that? That's real money that's in an account. I understand that this body wants to make sure that all the excess money is spent, or all monies that have not been appropriated is done right away, because we don't want the executive branch to start spending money that we can't get our hands on. It's so sad that this type of fight is going on between the legislature and the executive branch. I voted no on this budget bill for those reasons. But I do appreciate the conversations that we had. I do appreciate the collaboration that we had in this body. Even though we didn't agree on a lot of things, there were some things we did agree, but it did not outweigh my vote to vote yes for this budget. Now that we are finished with 4 weeks of budget, the next part of us is to introduce legislation that would help our island, to protect our island, to ensure that our students have a place to go to study, and most especially a hospital. And I'm hoping that this body starts to pay attention to the hospital right now. The Republicans introduced a bill for the hospital, and I hope my colleagues on the other side of the aisle will take interest in that and work together. They always talk about being collaborative and working together. Well, this is an opportunity, my colleagues on the other side, to come together and finally address our hospital. Again, I'd like to thank not just the clerks and everyone here at the legislature, but I also like to thank my staff personally for always watching session during budget time, being there, prepared, whether it was after 5 o'clock or not. They've been there. Thank you, Rowena. Thank you, Natalie. Thank you, Pete. And thank you, Kelly, for being part of what makes Guam great. And especially, Madam Speaker, I'd like to thank my colleagues that have come to budget hearings, have come to public hearings, and was here during the time of 4 weeks of budget deliberations. I'd like to thank those, and you know who you are. Thank you for being on time, too, especially Senator Jesse Lujan, who is, I don't think he's ever been late to a budget hearing, so thank you to him as well. I wish you all a safe Labor Day, and looking forward to the next time we meet again in this hall for budget. And let's pray that there is funding to fund all those things that was in this budget. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Is there anyone else who'd like to be recognized? If not, Majority Leader Senator Shelton, you're recognized.
Assiduous Masi, Madam Speaker. I move to adjourn today's session subject to the call of the Speaker.
On the motion to adjourn, subject to the call of the Speaker, is there any objection? Seeing no objection, motion, we are adjourned. Assiduous Masi.